The sandstorm raged for 3 days, cutting Dr. Rice and her small team off from the outside world. During that time, the beacon's countdown pulsed with increasing urgency, bathing their makeshift lab in alternating hues of cobalt and amber. Rice hadn't slept since touching the sphere, her mind crowded with visions that felt like memories of places she'd never been. "Elena, you need to rest," Dr. Karim said, offering her water. "Whatever's happening to you." "I can't," she interrupted, her fingers dancing across her tablet, transcribing symbols she shouldn't understand. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them watching us." "Who's watching?" Karim asked, concern etching deeper lines into his weathered face. "Everyone," she whispered. "The whole galaxy just heard us scream." The satellite phone chirped, finally reconnecting as the storm subsided. It was Washington, then Beijing, then Moscow, all reporting the same phenomena. Massive electromagnetic disturbances, astronomical instruments detecting impossible objects appearing and disappearing at the edge of the solar system, and a strange harmonic frequency detected in everything from seismographs to hospital EEG machines. The world was noticing. The world was afraid. On the third night, Rice woke from a fitful sleep to find herself humming a melody she'd never heard before. The sound made her molars ache and her vision blur, but her fingers moved instinctively to the beacon, tracing patterns across its liquid metal surface. Broadcast complete, she found herself saying in a language that wasn't her own, "Defense protocol initiated." Something inside her had been awakened, something buried so deep in human DNA that it had been waiting for millennia to be triggered again. When the military helicopter arrived the next morning to evacuate them and secure the artifact, Rice noticed she could hear the subtle discordance in its rotors, the harmonic imperfection that made its metal fatigue faster than necessary. Without thinking, she hummed 3 precise notes. The sound should have been inaudible over the helicopter's roar, yet the vibration rippled outward. The pilot's eyes widened as his instruments suddenly registered peak efficiency, the engine noise dropping to a perfect, clean resonance. "How did you do that?" Karim asked, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. Rice shook her head. "I didn't. We did. It's in all of us." As they flew toward the capital with the secured beacon, Rice stared out at the endless desert below. Whatever had been unleashed was only beginning. The countdown wasn't just measuring time. It was measuring distance. How long until they arrive? That night, as scientists and military officials argued over the artifact, now secured in a lead-lined chamber beneath the capital, children across the world woke simultaneously from dreams filled with music. Some began to sing in perfect harmony, despite having never met. Others built crude instruments that produced sounds that shouldn't have been possible. The melody was spreading. Humanity was remembering its song. And across the vast emptiness of space, hungry ears were listening. The Vasari ultimatum plunged Earth into chaos. Religious fanatics proclaimed the end times, governments declared martial law, and suicide rates spiked as humanity confronted its apparent helplessness before superior beings. But Dr. Elena Rice wasn't helpless. In the subterranean lab where she'd been sequestered since the Madagascar demonstration, she worked with manic intensity. The blackouts were coming more frequently now, leaving her surrounded by inexplicable devices constructed from ordinary materials reconfigured at the molecular level. "You've built a quantum resonator," General Park said, entering the lab with 2 aides who carried a metal case between them. "Or at least, that's what our physicists think it is." "I don't know what I've built," Rice admitted, studying the delicate crystalline structure that hummed almost imperceptibly. "But I know what it does." Park raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "It translates." She turned to the general, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Their technology, their weapons, they operate on principles of harmonic resonance. Sound is a fundamental force, not just a wave. And humans can hear the weak points in their harmonic fields. You expect me to tell the president we'll defeat an advanced alien armada by what? Singing at them." Rice laughed, a sound bordering on hysteria. Not just singing. The right frequency, at the right amplitude, delivered through the right medium, can disrupt any system, even their ships. Park nodded to his aides, who opened the case. Inside lay hundreds of small devices, each the size of a smartphone. Mass-produced based on your prototype, Park explained. Simple sonic emitters, but we need the frequency codes. Rice picked one up, feeling its weight. I can give you frequencies that will disrupt their communications, maybe even their propulsion systems temporarily. But to really hurt them. She closed her eyes, accessing memories that weren't entirely her own. We need more people, thousands with the ability. And they're out there. The beacon woke something in our genetic code. People who can naturally hear these frequencies. How do we find them? They're finding us. The musicians reporting strange experiences, the deaf individuals suddenly feeling sounds, the children having synchronized dreams. They're all part of it. Within hours, a shadowy global network activated. While governments publicly prepared surrender terms, underground message boards identified individuals with the emerging ability. Musicians, sound engineers, autistic individuals with perfect pitch, all reporting the same phenomena since the beacon activated. In improvised bunkers beneath New York, street musicians tested Raya's devices, discovering they could amplify their innate abilities. A jazz quartet caused a small Vasari probe to crash in Central Park, just by improvising in a particular key. A deaf percussionist in Queens found she could see Vasari communication frequencies as colors in the air. As the deadline approached, humanity's resistance gathered. Not armies with useless conventional weapons, but ordinary people with extraordinary gifts. The Vasari commander, monitoring Earth's pitiful preparations from orbit, reported to its superiors with contempt. They prepare symbols and sounds against our weapons. They know nothing of true power. It would be the last transmission the Vasari collective would receive from Earth. The Vasari attack on New York began precisely at the deadline, with methodical efficiency. Their crystalline ships descended through cloud cover in perfect formation, weapons charging with an eerie violet glow that reflected off skyscrapers below. What they couldn't see was the network of sound engineers and musicians positioned across the 5 boroughs, each equipped with Raya's devices, and connected through a hastily established encrypted network. Classical violinists huddled in subway stations. Gospel choirs gathered in church basements. DJs converted nightclub sound systems into massive acoustic amplifiers. Their beginning atmospheric approach came the alert through earpieces. Phase 1 initiate. Across the city, humans with newly awakened abilities began producing their assigned frequencies. Individually, each sound seemed random. Discordant notes, rhythmic patterns that made no musical sense, vocal harmonies that caused discomfort to ordinary listeners. But in combination, guided by Dr. Raya's mathematical models, they created something unprecedented, a counter-harmonic field that surrounded the city like an invisible dome. The first Vasari scout ship to hit this field shuddered violently. Its pilot, confused by instrument readings showing simultaneous system failures, attempted to compensate by boosting power to its harmonic engines, exactly what Reyes had predicted. The feedback loop created by this response caused cascading failures as the ship's own energy was redirected against it. The vessel didn't explode, it unraveled, coming apart in layers as though being methodically disassembled by invisible hands. Watching from the U.S. Lincoln offshore, General Park lowered his binoculars. "My God," he whispered. But the Vasari adapted quickly. Their command ship altered its approach, emitting counter-frequencies that began to neutralize the human defense. For a moment, it seemed humanity's advantage was already lost. Then came the second phase. Car horns throughout Manhattan blared in coordinated sequence. Emergency sirens, subway brakes, even the city's famous steam pipes were incorporated into the symphony as ordinary citizens followed instructions broadcast on emergency channels. The cacophony coalesced into something more, a citywide instrument played by 8 million people simultaneously. In orbit, Vasari prisoners captured for study began vibrating in their containment cells, their bodies resonating with Earth's counterattack. One guard reported in panic as a human prisoner simply walked through her supposedly impenetrable energy restraints, the barrier dissolving at her touch. The flagship's admiral, sensing disaster, ordered maximum power to weapons. The final mistake. The harmonic feedback, created by millions of human voices joining in dissonant harmony, created a standing wave that traveled up the Vasari energy weapons, reversed their polarity, and collapsed the ship's containment field from within. The massive vessel imploded with a thunderclap that shattered windows across Manhattan, its crystalline remains dissolving into diamond dust that glittered in the sunset. Similar reports flooded in from Paris, Tokyo, Cairo. Everywhere the Vasari had targeted for their initial assault. Humanity hadn't just defended itself. It had discovered a fundamental weakness in an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. The counterattack had begun. The consortium delegation established their embassy in what remained of the United Nations complex, their sleek, pearlescent vessel hovering silently above the East River. Unlike the Vasari ships, these emitted no detectable harmonic signals, a silence that Dr. Rice found more disturbing than any noise. "You've impressed certain powers," Nexus said, its liquid metal form rippling as it spoke to the Emergency Council of World Leaders. "Others you've terrified. The galaxy hasn't seen composer abilities manifest at this scale since the Purge." "We keep hearing that term. Composers," the Chinese premier said. "What exactly were they?" Nexus's form shifted, projecting a holographic star map. The galaxy's first true civilization, masters of harmonic manipulation on scales you've only begun to imagine. They're not myths or aliens to you. They're your ancestors. Meanwhile, at the research facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Rice stood before the beacon, now suspended in a containment field. For weeks, scientists had tried every conventional method to access its data storage, with no success. "Everyone out," she ordered suddenly, her voice carrying an authority that surprised Evenmere. When the room emptied, she approached the beacon and began to hum, a melody that had haunted her dreams since first contact. The sphere responded immediately, its surface patterns flowing like quicksilver. A projection filled the chamber. Not just star maps, but memories. Rise watched herself, or someone with her face, commanding a vessel larger than a city, orchestrating a defense against a darkness that consumed stars. She felt the weight of billions of lives under her protection. These weren't alien memories implanted in her mind. They were her own, locked away in genetic code that had been dormant for millennia. When Nexus requested a private meeting an hour later, Reyes was still processing what she'd learned. The liquid metal being studied her with eyes that constantly shifted color. "You're remembering faster than anticipated," it said without preamble. "Who am I?" Reyes asked. Or rather, who was I? Commander Area of the Harmonic Defense Corps, architect of the Concordance, the last composer to fall in the final symphony. Nexus's form rippled. "My creator." The revelation struck Reyes like a physical blow. "Your creator." I was designed as a failsafe. If the composers were ever eliminated, I would guide their eventual rebirth. Its surface darkened, but something has gone wrong. The timeline has been accelerated by external forces. The ancient enemy the composers imprisoned is stirring, manipulating events from the shadows. The Vasari attack wasn't just about conquest, Reyes realized. It was about finding and destroying all composer beacons before your species fully awakened. Nexus's form solidified into a more humanoid shape. But there's more. Your people were scheduled to remember gradually, over centuries. Instead, you're achieving in weeks what should take generations. Something has terrified the old powers into accelerating the timeline. What could frighten beings powerful enough to orchestrate galactic events? Nexus's voice dropped to a whisper that seemed to bypass her ears entirely. "Something worse than your kind is coming." 6 months transformed Earth beyond recognition. The gleaming resonance towers that now dominated city skylines pulsed with energy that made the air shimmer, their crystalline structures grown, rather than built using techniques recovered from beacon memories. Each tower served as both training center and defensive node in the planetary harmonic grid. Dr. Rice, now director of Earth's Harmonic Defense Initiative, watched from her office in the Rocky Mountain complex as children in the courtyard below practiced their abilities. A circle of 8-year-olds sang in perfect harmony, causing a withered plant at the center of their formation to regenerate and bloom within minutes. They learned faster than adults, General Park observed, standing beside her. Some of the instructors can barely keep up. Their neural pathways are more adaptable, Rice replied. And they don't have preconceptions about what's possible. The early warning system activated with a chime that resonated through the complex at a frequency only those with awakened abilities could hear. Park couldn't detect it, but he recognized Rice's sudden alertness. They're coming. The observation deck, filled with officers and scientists as holographic displays, showed the approaching Vasari Armada. Thousands of vessels, including 3 planet killers, each capable of rendering Earth's surface uninhabitable. Time to impact, Rice asked. 48 hours at current velocity. A technician responded. They're moving cautiously this time. Rice nodded. Deploy the orbital resonators. Begin global harmonic synchronization. Within hours, every functioning broadcast system on Earth transmitted the same message. Instructions for citizens to participate in humanity's defense through what was officially designated Harmonic Response Protocol Alpha. Musicians would lead local gatherings, but everyone, regardless of musical ability, would contribute. Will it work? Park asked privately as they left the command center. The simulation showed we'd need at least 50 million synchronized participants to generate a field strong enough to affect that many ships. We won't have 50 million, Rice said, her eyes reflecting the pulsing lights of the resonance tower. We'll have billions. When the Vasari fleet entered the solar system, they approached with shields at maximum, weapons primed for immediate response to any harmonic attack. Their analysts had studied recordings of the previous defeat, developing countermeasures for every frequency humans had deployed. What they couldn't counter was scale. The first symphony began as a whisper, a simple 5-note sequence broadcast globally, each note held for precisely 12 seconds. As billions of human voices joined, amplified by everything from professional sound systems to improvised instruments, the harmonic pattern grew exponentially in complexity. In orbit, Vasari sensors detected the building wave but couldn't identify any threatening pattern in the seemingly random noise. By the time their analysts realized each human voice contributed a mathematically precise component to an impossibly complex equation, it was too late. The symphony reached its first crescendo, and space itself began to ripple around the alien fleet. The dissolution of the Vasari Armada sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Quantum communications channels buzzed with panic as civilizations that had built their security doctrines around Vasari supremacy suddenly found themselves in an uncertain universe. Species that had suffered under their rule for millennia celebrated openly, while others scrambled to forge new defensive alliances. In Moscow's Red Square, now dominated by a massive resonance tower that hummed with crystalline harmony, Dr. Rice met with the consortium's emergency delegation. Representatives from 17 major galactic powers watched with thinly veiled fear as she demonstrated humanity's newest breakthrough, harmonic matter manipulation that assembled complex molecular structures from raw elements in seconds. "You're advancing too quickly," the Andari representative chittered, its translucent exoskeleton flashing warning colors. "Evolution has protocols. There are stages that must be respected." "We're not evolving," Rice corrected. "We're remembering." As the diplomats argued, Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network detected a disturbance, a massive fleet assembling at the galactic core. Not Vasari, but a coalition of older, more established powers. The Archean Conclave, the Vir Triumvirate, the Silence Directive. Species whose civilizations predated human evolution itself, all suddenly united in purpose. Their declaration arrived simultaneously on all Earth communication channels. Humanity was designated an existential instability, a threat to galactic order requiring immediate containment. A blockade of 10,000 warships would isolate Sol system indefinitely. Any attempt by humans to leave their solar system would trigger immediate neutralization protocols. In the secure war room beneath Geneva, world leaders gathered to determine humanity's response. Military commanders advocated for a preemptive strike using the Symphony, arguing that humanity's window of advantage might be closing. Scientists proposed accelerated development of interstellar harmonic technology to bypass the blockade entirely. Religious leaders called for diplomatic approaches, believing peaceful coexistence still possible. Reyes, her consciousness now partly merged with her composer memories, saw a darker truth in the beacon's historical records. The species forming the blockade weren't acting independently. Their minds were subtly influenced by the discordance, a parasitic consciousness that had opposed the composers for millions of years. "We've been misunderstanding the situation entirely," she explained to the assembled leaders. "This isn't about species competing for dominance. It's about two fundamental forms of consciousness, harmonic and discordant. The discordance doesn't conquer, it infects, turning civilizations against each other to feed on the resulting conflict." She projected a simulation showing neural patterns of affected species, subtle harmonic distortions that made aggression and fear the default responses to any challenge. "If we respond with a destructive symphony, we'll kill trillions of essentially innocent beings who are acting under influence. If we go silent and accept containment, the discordance will eventually infiltrate Earth as well." "Then what option remains?" asked the Secretary General. Reyes smiled with grim determination. "We compose a different kind of symphony, not to destroy, but to liberate." Operation Harmonic Liberation launched under cover of a diplomatic overture. While Earth's representatives engaged the blockade fleet in negotiations, 50 specialized teams departed in vessels unlike anything humanity had previously constructed. Ships grown from crystalline seeds that responded directly to their pilots' harmonic signatures, rendering them nearly undetectable to conventional sensors. Dr. Reyes, commanding the flagship Resonant Dawn, led the most crucial mission to the consortium headquarters. As her vessel slipped through the blockade using frequency-shifting technology that temporarily phased them into an adjacent dimensional plane, she addressed the gathered harmonic adepts in the ship's central chamber. "Each of you was chosen for your unique harmonic signature," she said to the assembly of musicians, mathematicians, and those with newly awakened abilities. "Together, we form a composition that can penetrate the discordance's interference." Among them stood Mira Chen, a 16-year-old violinist whose perfect pitch had evolved into something far more powerful, the ability to identify and replicate any harmonic pattern after hearing it once. Besides her, David Okafor, once deaf from birth, could now see sound waves as visible patterns and manipulate them with extraordinary precision. The Resonant Dawn emerged from frequency shift near the Nexus, a massive space station at the Galactic Center where the consortium maintained its headquarters. Their arrival triggered immediate alarms, but Reyes had anticipated this. She nodded to Mira, who drew her bow across her modified quantum violin, producing a cascading series of notes that caused the station's external sensors to record only background radiation. "We have 18 minutes before their manual systems detect the discrepancy," Reyes informed the team. "Proceed as planned." While security teams were misdirected by harmonic decoys projected throughout the station, Reyes led her core team to the central chamber where the consortium's governing council met. There, beneath the ornate floor that had hosted galactic deliberations for millennia, lay the master beacon, the first ever created by the ancient composers. As they approached the chamber, they encountered the discordance's most powerful thralls, beings whose minds had been so thoroughly corrupted that they appeared physically distorted, their bodies emitting visible disharmony that made human eyes water. "Defensive formation," Rise ordered as the thralls attacked with weapons that fired pure discordant energy. The human team responded not with conventional weapons, but with harmonic counters. David projecting a shield of perfectly balanced frequencies, while Mira played a sequence that made the very air between them solidify into crystalline barriers. Rise advanced through the chaos, her consciousness now fully merged with her composer memories. She reached the central platform and placed her hands on the ancient controls, singing a complex activation sequence that hadn't been heard in the galaxy for over 50,000 years. The master beacon responded, its dormant systems reawakening with a pulse that momentarily silenced all sound in the chamber. Then it rose from its housing, unveiling its true form, not a simple sphere like Earth's beacon, but a complex crystalline lattice that reconfigured itself into a perfect acoustic resonator. Now, Rice commanded, we sing the truth. 5 years after the Resonance Revolution, Dr. Elena Rice stood on the observation platform of the Harmonic Nexus, gazing out at what had once been the consortium headquarters. The massive structure now served as both university and cultural center for thousands of species, its architecture continuously evolving as its crystalline components responded to the emotions and thoughts of its inhabitants. Below, representatives from 500 worlds prepared for the first graduation ceremony of the Composer Academy. Students who had once been bitter enemies now collaborated on projects that would have seemed miraculous a decade earlier. Living architecture that purified atmospheres as it grew, communication systems that operated through quantum harmonics, medical techniques that could heal genetic damage through precisely calibrated sound. They're ready for you, Nexus said, approaching in its preferred humanoid form. The being that had once been Reyes's failsafe now served as her closest advisor and friend. Reyes nodded, her partially transcended form shimmering slightly at the edges. The transformation had begun 3 years ago, her physical body gradually shifting toward a state of pure harmonic energy, a metamorphosis that earlier composers had undergone after centuries of development. Her accelerated evolution concerned some, but Reyes embraced it, understanding it as necessary for what was to come. The ceremony began with a moment of silence, a tradition honoring those lost in the conflicts before harmony was established. Then, as one, the graduating class produced a perfect harmonic chord that made the entire structure resonate in sympathy. Each of you arrived here carrying the wounds of old conflicts. Rides addressed them, her voice reaching each individual perfectly regardless of distance or species-specific hearing limitations. You leave as the first generation to fully understand that our differences are not obstacles but essential components of the greater harmony. She gestured toward the massive viewport where 1,000 ships waited in formation, the expedition fleet that would soon depart beyond the galactic barrier. Each vessel, grown rather than constructed, housed representatives from dozens of worlds working in perfect concert. The symphony of destruction that humanity unleashed was necessary, she continued, but it was merely the first movement in a greater composition. Today, we begin the symphony of creation. The counterpoint, the entity once known as the Discordance, manifested beside her, its form now structured and purposeful rather than chaotic. Integration rather than destruction had been the key. The entity that had opposed harmony for eons now provided the necessary tension that made true creation possible. Together, they activated the ceremonial beacon, a replica of the original that had awakened humanity, but refined and enhanced. This time, the signal it broadcast wasn't a warning or a call to arms, but an invitation extended to unknown civilizations beyond the galactic edge. As the expedition fleet prepared for departure, humanity's greatest composer unveiled her final work, a piece designed to echo across the cosmos for millennia to come. The composition began with the exact note that had started everything in the Atacama Desert, but now resolved into a harmony of infinite complexity and beauty. What had begun as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become the greatest renaissance the universe had ever witnessed.